The information presented in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not meant to be a substitute for clinical mental health treatment. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988 or head to your nearest emergency room.
Welcome to the Black People Die by Suicide 2 podcast, where we discuss all things mental health with an emphasis on suicide within the Black community. I am your co-host, T-Kea.
And I'm your co-host, Jordan.
So if you're returning, welcome back. And if you are new, then welcome. On this podcast, we talk all things suicide, people with lived experience, but we also talk about mental health, self-care, and wellness. And so when we start off every episode, we have our wellness check-in. And it's just a time for us to acknowledge where we are. And we also added recently, shout out to the esteemed Dr. Rita Walker, right, Jordan? Our psychological fortitude. So we add that as well. And our psychological fortitude is just really our ability to be able to bounce back and overcome adversity, but also being aware of how we are mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and giving us a rate of 0 to 10. 0 being I can't go on with life. I'm in a crisis. I'm down bad. 10 being at your best, you're thriving, and nothing can get in your way. So what I love about psychological fortitude is not that it just reminds us to be aware of where we are, but also letting other people know how we're doing so that we can advocate for ourselves and get the support that we need. So I guess I can start off to do my check-in. If I had to do my PF, I guess I'll do my PF first and explain. I don't know. I'm about between a 5 and a 6 today. So that's actually low. Dr. Walker says we should have an 8 or above. And part of that is I am working on learning to cut back a bit in terms of what I have going on. I have been you've been listening to the podcast for a while. You probably tired of me saying this, but I have been overwhelmed with all that's going on and juggling a lot of balls in the air and really doing my best to make sure that I'm sleeping. And usually I'm really good about my sleep, but it's been a struggle. I had checked in this morning because I've been trying to become aware of how much I'm working. This morning, I clocked 70 hours and it is Saturday. So, I'm like, okay, so now that I am aware, right? That's the first step, bringing it to your awareness. Now I'm trying to figure out, okay, what things do I need to put in place? What do I need to ask of other people? But it's just also very hard when you're in the beginning stages of starting an organization. You know, I never planned on starting a nonprofit. That was not really my thing. I was fine being like a little solopreneur doing consulting. I was fine, but I'm grateful that I answered the call. But it just comes with a lot of work, dedication, and sacrifice trying to juggle two businesses at the same time. So it has been a lot. And I'm like, okay, so that's just how I'm doing. Just a little overwhelmed, tired, and frustrated. So that's where I am. Jordan.
For me, my score, I'm going to give myself probably a 4.5, maybe a 5 right now, but overall a 4.5. It's a rough time of year for me. And I'm a little bit nervous about this year in particular. So I've talked about this in prior episodes, but we're encroaching upon Father's Day at the time of this recording. And y'all know June is just that month for me. My father passed away. The last time I spoke to him was June 15th of 2008, and he died on June 17th of 2008. And Father's Day has fallen on June 17th so many times over the past however many years since he's been gone now, 14, I think. And with this already being a year that I wasn't doing the best mentally, I'm a little bit worried about how it's going to affect me this year. But I'm hanging in there. I'm hanging in there. I did go see my father yesterday, well, visited his grave yesterday. So that made me feel a little bit stronger. But I'm probably a good 4.5. Yeah. A little grief, but we'll get through it.
See, that's what I love about our podcast because we are very real and transparent about where we are. And so we're getting ready to transition into welcoming our guests, which I'm excited about because I've talked about this guest on the podcast quite a few times. We are joined today by Mr. Jason Phillips, who is a wonderful therapist, y'all, life coach, speaker, college professor. He is also the founder of Peace and Prosperity Coaching, and the Peace and Prosperity Podcast. Y'all know when I talk, Jordan, you already know I'm always talking about Jason all the time because his content is amazing. He's one of my favorite accounts on social media. So when we got a chance to meet him in New York, it was great because I was like, oh, now he's not online. He's like in the flesh. And so I'm excited. So Jason, how are you? Welcome to the podcast and let us know how you're doing.
Well, first, I am excited to be here, y'all. Like I said, it's been a minute since I've been on a podcast, so to be on y'all platform, I feel very honored. Meeting y'all in person was amazing. I remember, y'all had a chance to kind of sit up there with me at the Mental Wealth Expo, and I really appreciated all of your energy. And again, y'all have a wonderful platform. So do I check in now? Am I supposed
to? Check in. Tell us, and also tell us you can tell us your PF too. So
yeah, my PF, I would say probably about a 6. So
we all on the low side.
I'm going to get Chick-fil-A after we finish our conversation, so that'll put me up at about an 8. So
well, I'm good. Enjoy your Chick-fil-A. Whatever you got to do to bring that PF up.
Yeah, it's just been busy, as you all mentioned. Running the organization, it is time consuming. Jordan, I lost my father too. It's been about 21 years now, so thinking about Father's Day and how that's going to impact me. But again, I'm glad to be here, and I really appreciate y'all being so transparent and authentic in the check-in.
Yes. Jordan, were you going to say something before? I didn't want to cut you off.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, well, we're going to move right along to this discussion. So I got my notes over here because I am ready, okay? So I had to reach out to Jason. I've been wanting Jason on the podcast because we really just want to talk about one word, confidence, but also how trauma impacts confidence. How do you build confidence? What does it look like? And a lot of your content has really been surrounding that. It's been surrounding other things too, but of course, those are the ones that tend to stand out to me, especially this season that I'm in. And we'll get into that because I know you saw that video I posted on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm glad you tagged me in that. I definitely want to get into that too.
So I'm excited. So Jason, can you just tell us a bit about yourself first, outside of the introduction, I shared, but what led you to choose a career in mental health? I mean, because it's so important, especially as a Black man.
Yeah, I think, the older I get, I'm like, the career kind of chose me. And I know that sometimes sounds cliche, but for real, being able to hold space for somebody to talk about their issues, feel comfortable, and know that it's going to be super confidential as well, that's been a part of me since forever. So once I found out about therapy and social work, psychology, the field, it really attracted me because I'm like, I would love to be able to help people with their issues and their goals. That's kind of how it started. But then also I wondered as a young person, how come some people are impacted by certain things and other people aren't? Like, why would we could all go to the same school, but then one person drops out, one person goes on to be like a top entrepreneur, and then somebody else is just kind of struggling. Like, where does the the thought process go, and how does that impact us? So that's what led me to really wonder, like, how do certain people reach their goals and then other people struggle with it?
Yes, that you
Yeah.
know
So
what? That's a good point.
no.
Like two people can experience the same event, the same environment and come out completely different and it does make you wonder like what's the factors that make people turn different ways. So, I'm glad you brought that up. Go ahead, T-Kea, you were going to say something.
No, I don't even remember what I was gonna say.
Oh.
I think I was just gonna ask a question. But I mean, I guess let's just jump right into talking about confidence and what ways does confidence positively impact an individual, and what can people do to build confidence?
Yeah, so one, confidence is something that we all sometimes struggle with at different points in our lives or different areas of our lives. So maybe you're confident with your personality, but then professionally, you're not as confident. So being confident, it impacts us in so many different ways that I don't think we always realize it. I was having a conversation just yesterday with a friend who's doing well, but then we were talking about some business aspirations, and they were like, the one thing that I think is holding me back, and they were like, no, I know it's holding me back is confidence. So having that belief in yourself, it really helps you to do the hard things. So for instance, with this podcast, it's not easy having a podcast. I know because I have one. But when you have the confidence and the ability to push through, even despite all the hiccups and the challenges, then you're able to kind of tell yourself, wow, you know what? Something may be super challenging, but with me being confident, I can still push through it and be resilient.
Can
So
you give
that's you.
us
I'm sorry, I keep
Sorry.
cutting you off, Jordan. No,
It's
you
okay.
go.
It's okay.
No, Jordan, you go.
Y'all, T-Kea is really excited about this episode. I am too. We're glad that we have Jason here, y'all. He is the confidence guru. Okay, so
Yes,
if
yes.
there's anyone to talk about this subject, it's him, and we're excited to have him on. So can you give any examples of experiences that would impact someone's self-esteem and make it difficult for them to build confidence? And if trauma plays a part in that.
Yeah, I'll start with one that stands out. So, one, confidence is the ability to be yourself. So, you're not thinking about what other people have to say, you're not comparing yourself. You can be your biggest cheerleader. But there could be times where somebody says something about you. Let's take, for instance, being in school, being picked on, being bullied. Now, again, we've been out of high school for a minute, but those memories sometimes still kind of linger and they can kind of rear their ugly head depending on if we work through them or not. So that trauma from maybe grade school, being teased, being called a name, it can still show up right now. You could be 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, but then those memories and what somebody said to you, it still hurts you. And that's where the trauma comes in, and it impacts you from being able to be who you want to be or do what you want to do, because you're still thinking about how it felt when you were told that you weren't enough or you were picked on as a young person.
Oh, Jason, you got me going. You got me thinking about something. So I've always been of the club thickness. Let's say that I've always had curves. I've always had hips, all of that. But I've also was just always been heavier than a
Mm-hmm.
lot of my peers, and I was picked on for. I remember like, look, you talk about from before. I remember I was in 8th grade. A guy, boy, told me like, I would date you. You're very pretty, but you're just fat. Of course, I remember that. I was 13. I'm in my 30s now, but look, it still stays with you, right? And then I have my brother. He also used to pick on me and about my weight and stuff. And I bring this up because, and I even remember, and I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast before, but I remember being like 7 or 8, and I was inside a Kmart. And like in the 90s, y'all know Jenny Craig was a really big thing. And I remember telling my mother walking through the Jenny Craig all that 7, like, Mommy, I need to get Jenny Craig. Like, I don't know. Obviously, it's the messaging, what I saw, what people were saying to me that made me feel like at 7 years old, I needed to lose weight. So how that played out into my adulthood. Now I feel like I'm being a rebel because now I'm like, nope, I'm gonna wear the crop top. I'm gonna wear what I want to wear. If it makes somebody else uncomfortable, that's on them. So I used to have a difficult time, and not I never really necessarily thought I was ugly, but I did have a struggle with like loving like my body,
Mm-hmm.
specifically my stomach area. Like I've always had a challenge surrounding that. And now, thank God for therapy and all that stuff, is like I realize now that it's more about other people and like how they're projecting or what their views are and less about me. So if I'm confident then in myself, then nothing else that someone says can really shake me. But when you were talking, it kind of made me think about that and how, and like you said, in one area you can be really confident because like my careers, my goals, my aspirations, nobody can check me on that because I know what I bring to the table. I know my worth. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm that girl. So it's very interesting that you talked about that. So when you were speaking, those are the things that kind of came to mind.
Yeah, because think about that, right? You say you were 7 years old and thinking, hey, I might need Jenny Craig, which when I think about Jenny Craig, she was like a middle aged white woman. They had the videos where she would go from like being bigger and then she would get skinny. Right? But at seven, that's how you were thinking. And then it changes how you show up. So some ways that how it impacts our confidence is one, we start overthinking, thinking about things that we don't really have no business thinking about, especially in
Mm-hmm.
seven or even now in your 30s. Then it could impact your decision making. So let's say we want to go out to a party. I'm like, hey Jordan, let's hit T up. We all about to go to the club. You're overthinking what you're about to wear.
Mm-hmm.
Not realizing that it's not right now that you're thinking about, it's when you were seven and somebody said, yeah, you really pretty, but you kind of fat.
Mm-hmm.
So then what happens? It can lead to isolation where you say, you know what? Hey, y'all, I want to go. My bread ain't really right. But that's a lie. It's really you don't feel comfortable in, what you're going to wear or how you show up.
Yeah, this is a good topic for me because I full transparency for the listeners and even T-Kea and Jason. I am someone who really struggles with my self-confidence and my self-esteem, and a lot of that I actually got from home. So I too was always a heavier child, but I never really got picked on about it. Sorry y'all. In school, I actually got it from home. So it's myself and my older brother, and my older brother was always the thin one, like stick thin. He could eat anything he wanted and never gain weight. I, on the other hand, have always struggled with my weight. And so my parents were constantly on me about what I was eating. You can't eat this. You need to go exercise. You're fat. I'm in the plus size section. Y'all remember like when we had juniors plus clothes for the girls out there and the boys had
Sure.
husky. Y'all remember that? Yes. I was in junior plus. I remember going to JC Penney. I had to go to
Uh,
that section. And my parents were they were always on me about it. And I would feel so sad because my brother was over there eating all kinds of junk and they didn't get on him, even though it wasn't healthy. He just wasn't gaining weight. And I still struggle with my weight to this day and confidence in loving my body to this day. And I'm 34 years old. So it's amazing how those childhood experiences, as Jason said, kind of just roll over into adulthood.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because it can keep us stuck. Body types are different, right? So it's not like you were born and said, "Hey, I just want this to be my body type." This is how God created you. But then we try to be perfect. We kind of overdo certain things, and those messages, especially when it comes from people who we care about and who we love and love us, it stings a little bit more.
yeah, it does. And that's why for me, I'm gonna wear a crop top every chance I get. Okay. Let me tell you, I'm gonna be 80 wearing a crop top because just because. And I think a lot of it's just like I'm just being a little rebel from when I when I used to feel like that as a kid or even like in my early 20s, like, oh, I can't wear that. And so now just and when you talk about those limiting beliefs too, like I used to think like, oh, I can't run, I'm too fat. Now for the past 2 years I've been running. I didn't say I run fast, but I run, which is something that I never thought like, oh, I can't run. I'm running 3 and 4 miles a day, which and it's also helping me to build my confidence, which kind of rolls into another video that you posted. You talked about how exercise impacts one's confidence, and I know for me it certainly has impacted my confidence because I'm like, oh, my stamina is great. And I remember even one time going to the doctor, and I think they checked I don't know, it was my resting heart rate. And he said, "Are you an athlete?" I said, "No." He said, "Your resting heart rate is one of someone who's an athlete." And I'm like, "But if you look at my body, it doesn't look. I don't look like I play sports, but I am physically active. I'm lifting weights, I'm running." And that made me feel really good. Like, you go, girl. Don't matter what they said back in the day. Like. And so, can you even just speak to that? Like, how exercise impacts one's confidence?
Yeah, I think for me, so I'm almost 40, so I've been exercising consistently since I was probably about 13, 14. And back in, teenage years, I had so much acne. So if y'all know what that's like as a kid having acne, you like, dog, this is a lot, right? I'm trying to get an eczema, whatever I could to clear my face up. But I would kind of go towards exercising because that was something I could control. So it
Mm.
helped me feel better about myself, whether it's doing push-ups, lifting weights, and that's always been my thing. But then I also realized like I feel better after working out. And I remember one year, a couple years ago, I was really busy, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna slow down my workouts for a bit. And I didn't work out for like 3 weeks, and that was the worst I felt. So I always encourage people, even if you're doing 10, 15 minutes a day, it does not have to be long periods of time, but it helps you. One, it decreases anxiety. If you are feeling low or having, managing depression, it helps that. And then when you look good, you feel good. So when you look in the mirror and you say, I just walked a half a mile, or I just walked around my block. Now you said you were going to do something, and then you did it. Because confidence comes from accomplishments. Doesn't matter how big or how small. So once you put it out there and say, I'm going to do this, and then you do it, it's a wrap. You're going to see your confidence start to just slowly creep up.
It's so interesting you said that because earlier in the week I had texted Kia like, I need you to be my accountability partner because I'm trying to get more active and I'm trying to get back on track with eating healthier. I can definitely say that I do feel a lot better when I am engaged in physical activity, which at this time I am not. But I'm going to attempt to get back at least to the pool, get back out there with walking because I do like walking, hiking is the perfect time of year for that now. So that's something I definitely think would benefit my mental health. And also a little sidebar, y'all couldn't see it, but the shudder that went through me when you were talking about teenage acne, I'm like, I do. That took me back, brought back some memories I didn't know were locked in me. I'm glad those days are over.
For real, right? I remember the doctor gave me the list of what you cannot eat. I was like, what else is it? Like, it's
Yeah.
just on everything.
I'm sorry, y'all. I can't relate to your plight, but Jason's like, oh gosh, but it does, like, and help to build your confidence because, like, at first you do one thing, like before it's like, oh, I'm just doing, for instance, like 2 miles, and I'm like, oh, I did this in this amount of time. Let's see how much I could do in 3 miles. Like, you always kind of continue to set the bar a little bit higher, so it does help you to feel well. One of the things, of course, I wanted to bring up, and y'all probably like T-Kea taking over this conversation because Jason is the homie. We always talking on social media, and I've been waiting for this. Um, can you talk about, Jason, why sometimes celebrating yourself can be viewed as bragging and thinking that you're better than other people? And how does one know the difference that their ego is so big that they need to sit down and be humble? Or they just celebrate in their accomplishments? What does that look like?
I think most of us are not, I think most of us are too humble. We're not celebrating ourselves enough. So think about it like this. You'll never see somebody who's doing well hating on somebody who is doing, not well. So for instance, if somebody's telling you, hey, T-Kea, you need to tone it down, they are probably not happy with where they're at. So by you, celebrating yourself, it sparks something in them. It reminds them of what they're not doing. So they're telling you to kind of pipe down when in actuality, they can step it up and embrace themselves more. But see, oftentimes we tell somebody, oh, chill out, you flexing, you doing too much. But most of the time we're not doing enough. Think about like with certain songs, like I'm a Kanye West fan. And one thing about Kanye, he's got confidence. And when you listen to it, you like, oh wow, I need to probably, step it up myself or embrace who I am that much more. Because so often we're not ourselves, we're overthinking, we're comparing ourselves, and we're just not letting ourselves be who we are.
Speaking of Kanye, let me just say one of my favorite songs when I'm really feeling myself is You Can't Tell Me Nothing. Oh, that's one of my favorite songs when I'm feeling myself. I'm glad you mentioned that. But you know what? That's so interesting because I really enjoy like when people celebrate their accomplishments. I always feel like it's inspiring to see other people do well. So it's interesting that people have that reaction like, oh, you're doing too much. You should pipe down. No, celebrate yourself. I I see all sorts of things. Listen, T-Kea gets so much recognition, and I'm always just like in awe, like, girl, you are really out here killing it. And that's really inspiring to me. I don't think of it as anything but that. I don't know. I guess it just
He
depends
has
on
worked.
where someone is in their life.
Right, projecting, like Jason
Hmm.
said.
But Takia has worked for it too. Like y'all both have worked for it. So it's not like somebody's just out there celebrating nothing. Like they have actually done a lot. And it helps us to feel better about ourselves. Like people don't know the struggles that we have behind closed doors. We're not putting everything out there on social media. So if I put up a selfie or if I'm celebrating myself and something I've done, you would hope that people could embrace it and not hate on it. Because we know what that's like to feel hated on.
Yeah, and you know what, Jason? A lot of my honestly confidence, my mom was really good about pouring into me. So, like even with the Jenny Craig situation, she got down to my level and said, "You're beautiful. There's nothing wrong with you." You don't. Even though I still had a hard time believing it, but I also like as a child, I did pageants, and a lot of the pageants that I've done, they were not just based, they weren't simply like beauty. It was helping to help with public speaking, which can also help build confidence. Um, and there were pageants that I did 2, 3, and 4 times until I won. So when you talk about confidence and resiliency, it's like I was groomed from a very little girl to think like, so now that I'm, an adult, and even like one time, Jordan, I don't know if you remember, we were in a car, we were coming back from North Carolina, we were leaving the airport, and my when we did was at the U Stress Let's Talk About It Awards. We was in the car leaving the airport, and my mom called to say, and my mom is like my biggest hype person. Like when I remember I told her that I didn't get an opportunity, she was like, "Oh, they tripping." I was like, "I know, right? Do they not know who I am?" It was like a little joke. But I remember my mom said something. She was like, "Yeah, you're being invited to the White House and you're doing all these things and you're rubbing elbows and shoulders with all these people." And I said, "I'm the people. Like they invited me, not saying that like, oh, I'm too good, but also acknowledging that I deserve to be in the room."
Mm-hmm.
And that has taken a little bit of time to kind of like get there, but also realizing like I don't have to dim my light. And I remember my therapist used to always ask me like, "T-Kea, are you proud of yourself?" And I remember it was one time the same year my book my I self-published a book and I was on the billboard in Times Square, and my therapist asked me, "Are you proud of yourself?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but what do you want me to do? Do you want me to wear my accomplishments on a t-shirt? Like what do you want? What do you want from me?" But in that moment I started to realize, one, I was like too humble, like you said, Jason, and I also never really stopped to smell the roses. I'm a list checker, a go-getter. So when I accomplish one thing, oh, move to the next. Now in this season of my life, I've been being more intentional about celebrating and stopping to smell the roses and saying that I do deserve to be in those rooms. I do deserve this award or this acknowledgement, even though I don't do things for recognition.
Yeah, because when you think about when you're too humble, sometimes you can like put a glass ceiling on your own potential. Nobody else is doing it, but you're putting it on you. So a lot of times when I'm talking to like certain friends and definitely like the people who I work with, I'll ask them, "How come you give yourself that rating, and how come you didn't give yourself the higher rating?" "Oh, well, I thought I always had something to improve on," or "I didn't know I could do that. I'm too like meek or shy to really say, yeah, I am killing it in this area." because somebody told them that they weren't, and they remembered that, and that's what's sticking with them.
That was a message for me.
Yeah, go ahead, pop your stuff.
Yeah, I always say like I'm an extremely humble person and humble to a fault. So I definitely have the tendency to downplay the things I have accomplished or downplay the things that I am doing. It's still hard for me to celebrate myself, and I'm trying to work past that. It's something I need to talk about in therapy. But I'm glad we're having this conversation because you're definitely giving me some things to think about. And I'm sure for our listeners and viewers, you're also giving them some good tips. So I appreciate you for sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all. I mean, because it comes with like standards. So you think about the standards that you have for your life, and it's not about being arrogant or being what's the word, like high maintenance. It's just a standard. So when you set the standard for who you want in your life, like the relationships you want to have, how you want to show up in your career, that your platform, like this podcast, has a certain standard, and I love it. It's not about being arrogant. It's just about you knowing your worth and knowing the value of what you bring in every single room and every aspect of your life, and that comes with confidence.
Yes. And also, it's important how, and I know we're talking about like self confidence, but also realizing that our community and the people that we have in our lives, how they can help build our confidence. So I am ultimately very intentional about helping Jordan, because I know that's an area that she struggles with. So when it comes like to the organization, I'm like, oh, Jordan, you can lead this. Like for instance, like one of the things we do is like our monthly peer support groups, and we love Jordan because she always sheds the tears. Okay, one of the things that like she loves doing the peer support groups. Now, while yes, we both can do them, but I make an intentional effort to step back and allow her to shine, allow her to lead. Or any projects that we may be working on, because I know that's an area that she struggles with. And if you have people who love you and care about you in your life, they will push you to be the best version of yourself. And so I'm always like saying like, oh my gosh, like, you should be so proud of yourself. You've done all these things in a year. Like Jordan had no intention on ever. I don't know if she ever had a desire to be an entrepreneur, but this organization kind of pushed her into that. But she's like, I've seen her like blossom, like personally and professionally. And I often remind her of that. So even, can you speak to that? Like how the people in your life can also push you to be more confident?
Me or Jordan?
We could do both. Actually, Jordan can speak to it too.
Yeah. I'll speak to it first though. I will say, thinking about even myself, my confidence has definitely grown and been strengthened so much by family members. Like my mom was definitely my biggest supporter as well. My father too was a big believer and pusher. But then my friends, who I spent a lot of my time with, we've all poured into each other and instilled certain things in each other and pushed each other and given each other encouragement and feedback. Say, you know what, no, like, walk this way, or speak up for yourself, be more bold. And there are certain conversations that I've had with friends that stand out to me even more than I've had with therapists and coaches. So when you have people in your life who are, want you to win, like truly want you to win, you got to keep those people. But if you don't, you have to find the people, because if you don't,
Mm-hmm.
you have people around you who are jealous and who are holding you back. And if y'all not pouring into each other on a consistent daily basis, then that's not the person that you want for your inner circle. Because who you have around you, I truly believe, makes a vast difference in how you feel about yourself.
Yeah, if you're listening to the podcast, you can't see me crying, but yeah, I'm sure y'all are like, here she goes again. Um, it just makes me think about like my life experiences and particularly my childhood, because I was always constantly being knocked down. Like if what I did wasn't perfect, it was just I was always being so heavily criticized, particularly by my family. And even now, it makes it difficult for me to even show up as myself in any form of relationship, whether it's friendships with my family, because I always got the messaging, and it still sticks with me, that me being myself is never going to be good enough. So I really do struggle with my confidence. And that's why I appreciate people like T-Kea, or having a friend like T-Kea who tries to push me to see greater things for myself, because it's still very hard for me to do that alone. Um, yeah, self confidence is definitely something I really have to work on. And I'm grateful that T-Kea allows me the opportunity to, slowly get my little feet wet as I embark into something that is completely new for me. Even the public speaking or podcasting, doing presentations and stuff, isn't something that is in my background necessarily, but I appreciate that. And I'm starting to see that I'm capable of a lot more things than I previously gave myself credit for. So it's a learning experience.
Yeah, I've been throwing her in the fire. Like, I know. I sometimes I think Jordan's probably like, get me the hell out of this fire, T-Kea. Especially because I'm like high energy. I'm assertive. Jordan's more reserved and laid back, and I'd be like, "Go, girl! Like, what you doing?" But I always say she's handling it like a champ. And it's great because I do feel like we balance each other out in our personalities, and I do want to continue to see her, win and thrive. And so I think it's important that we be mindful, and people in our lives when they are struggling, asking ourselves, like, what can we do to help encourage them? Because I know what it's like to, of course, to struggle. And so this kind of helps me transition a bit to another um another topic. It's still kind of in the wheelhouse of confidence. But Jason, this is another thing that I really like about your content, is you have been open, and we have the energy about to really flow right now, about being a high achiever.
Yes.
And I love your content surrounding that because it helps me to feel seen and validated. For some time, I used to feel like, okay, maybe I have to shrink, like I'm doing too much. But I have always been like, if, like I mentioned before, if I have done pageants 3 and 4 times till I won, I'm like, oh yeah, there's nothing I could do. Like, your girl was got all the titles, okay? But it was because I'm like, no, but it has, of course, propelled me to be more confident. But with that, but also in other areas of my life with my career, like, I don't see any glass ceiling with my career. I really feel like I can tackle the world. And I remember Jordan, Jordan, I don't know if you remember, we were talking about, we were planning. So we're in the process of, and we can't share but so much on the podcast, but we're in the process of planning a really big event next year, our awards gala. And there's a particular person that we want to host. And we can't give it away. We can't really say that yet. But there's a person that we wanted to host. And I remember I was like, Jordan, yeah, they would be great to host. And Jordan was like, oh, they're gonna cost a little bit of money. And I was like, so I am appalled that you thought I can't do this. I could literally do anything I put my mind to. Of course, she didn't really mean it that way, but I was like, "Girl, I said, "You gonna learn today that if I say something's gonna happen, it's gonna get done. Maybe not when I want it to. I don't know how. I don't know when, but it's going to work out." So, can you just kind of speak to, the challenges? Like, it's good to be a high achiever, but also you can speak to, I guess, like the benefits, which people may know, but also like the challenges that come into that, and the downfalls, and like how trauma can play a role in that. And that's a lot of your content. I can relate to that because, yeah.
I think on the benefit side, it's so dope because like you don't have limits for yourself. You can just keep going and going and going and going. But then the downside is at some point you may run out of gas. Right? You just pushing that thing like the gas tank is on E. You like, I can make it. I know I've done this before. So it can be hard for you to self check. Like, well, when do I need to take a break? Because I know I didn't have that much energy when I published my book, but I did it. When I created the podcast, I didn't have that much energy, but I did it. So I can, innately, I can do hard things. But then on the flip side, when do you tell yourself, okay, I need to take a break. I need to slow down
Mm-hmm.
because you can burn out. And when somebody like Jordan may say, "Hey T, let's pull it back a little bit," you might be like, "You don't know me. You don't know me."
That's exactly how it goes too, Jason.
Like I'm just getting started. You're like, what? Oh my gosh! So it can be sometimes hard to rein yourself back in because you have done so many amazing things. That's why I love this book. It's called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." Where it
Ooh.
kind of tells you, hey, you may need to pivot on how you're doing things to get to that next level. We know you're at the next level, but you're about to get to that next level, and you got to sometimes slow down to speed up.
Hold on, what's the name of the book again?
What won't get you there?
What got you here won't get you there. Okay, thank you.
I'm
I'm
glad
writing
Jordan
that
made a
down.
note of it. I'm glad you made a note of it because I'll add that to add that. And I mean I talked about in the beginning of the podcast, I said I clocked 70 hours and we're recording this on a Saturday and this Monday to Saturday. So that's not a good thing. And I am very much so aware. And that's why I've been doing a much better job advocating for myself, saying like, hey, I need help, or hey, we're gonna have to postpone this. I have been, but it's still just a learning curve with juggling all of these things. And also acknowledging like now I'm in a space where I'm planning on okay, by the end of the year, I'm like something off my plate. I'm working to get something off my plate because it's not sustainable with, where I am. But yeah, like you talking about go, like I've been up working since 5 a.m. on a Saturday.
And see, I think the downside, like you don't really look like you've been up for a long time, right? You still got a lot of energy. You still got the bags. And when you said 70 hours in the check-in, I was like, oh dang, T got 70 hours of sleep this week. I'm like, that's 10 hours a day. But it's actually that's 70 hours of work.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, it was a work. Yes, it is, and honestly, I've talked about this before. Like, I do have, while we're in the process of building the organization and seeking funding, and then of course my consulting business, but I also do have a part-time job, and that's the one thing that is I'm planning, to transition from once things are okay financially, because like I said, I had no idea we were going to do this nonprofit. So that is another. And Jordan and I also invest in our own finances into the organization until it's able to have the foundation and the infrastructure and all of that. So it's challenging because I'm also in a season of sacrifice. But I will say that even though it's like, oh wow, she's been working. Last night I went and got a 90-minute massage. I slept on the table for 90 minutes. My friend was like, girl, you were knocked out. I was like, yes. And when I got in the house, okay, no, I lied. I didn't go straight to bed. I worked for like 20 minutes. Then I went to bed. And I went to bed and I was like, yeah, we're going to go to sleep. I was asleep. I know it was before 9:30 on a Friday. So I was like, yeah, I gotta go to sleep. That massage was great. And even I was talking to my therapist, my therapist, like, she said, that massage, she's like, that's a business expense. She was laughing, like making a joke out of it. She was like, but you have to take care of yourself to sustain. Like, it's hard. It's just very hard juggling, all the things that I'm juggling. So even with that, I still have carved out time for me. So like I have still worked out 5 days this morning, but that's because I do wake up at the crack of dawn. I do get up at 4. But even with that, it's still like, okay, I want to and work it in my schedule that I have just one day of doing nothing, because doing nothing is also being productive, you know? And that's a lot of times people, I think sometimes at one point in my life, I used to associate not doing nothing with like, oh, you're just being lazy. But it's like, no, girl, doing nothing is also productive. Like you said, you're not the Energizer Bunny. You're not a robot. Like your body has to take a break. So that's why I'm like, yeah, I've been working out. I'm doing these kind of things, but I still just need moments of like stillness, if that makes sense.
yeah, because you can't tell me one thing that goes really hard, like that uses a lot of energy, but doesn't need to charge up too. So you think about your car, you can think about your phone, whatever you're doing, you need to take a break on it, or else it's going to burn out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can we talk about peace and prosperity? Because when I saw that name, I was like, "Oh, that is the promised land right there." The two things we all need in life. One, I want to know what inspired you to name your business that, and secondly, what do peace and prosperity mean to you?
Oh, great question too. I don't think I've ever been asked this question ever. So the inspiration came because I wanted both, and I help people with both. So when it comes to peace, a lot of times people I'm working with people who are high achievers, but also may struggle with anxiety. So they desire more peace in their life. But then also
Mm.
I work with people who are high achievers, so they want more prosperity, whether that be in their relationships or in their business. So that's where the name came from, because people do seek out support because they want more relaxation and calm, but they also want more things, whether that be family, business, relationships, whatever that may be, but in the word of prosperity. Oh, and then for me, peace for me is being able to relax. So like being on the beach. Like I said, I'm going to get some Chick-fil-A after this, so that's going to be peace. But also prosperity means prosperity is continuing to grow. So like cultivating relationships with y'all, growing my finances, growing my family, just growing as an individual, growing my spirit. That's where the prosperity comes in and means to me.
Thank you for sharing that. I when I saw that your business had that name, I was so interested to hear your thoughts on it because I dream of a life where I can just be at peace, and I'm not there yet. I still have a lot of things that I have to work through. And I want to have enough resources, so to speak, to be able to enjoy that peace because I think we're such a grind culture, which isn't
Hmm.
necessarily a bad thing. But I think it's important that when you do amass the resources, whatever that may be for you, that makes you comfortable and you're able to live the life that you want to live, that you actually have time to live it. Like you have
Right.
the space to have that peace and you're not so overworked to enjoy it. So thank you for sharing that because I was like, oh, I want both of those things. I need him to tell me what inspired him to come up
Thank
with this
you for
name.
asking that. And I want to say this too, y'all, because the prosperity it starts in your mind. Yeah, you are your
Hmm.
biggest resource. So coming from an abundance mindset, that's what really shifted, my practice, my way of life. So Jordan, that prosperity that you want is already yours. You just got to go out there and take it.
Don't mind me. I'm just making notes. You are your biggest resource. Quote Jason Phillips. Got it. All right.
Hey, go ahead and get this free therapy real quick, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said that, Jason. And also, it's when we're talking about peace and prosperity, though, also thinking about, like you said, we have it within ourselves, but then also making sure that our environment is set up for that. And I don't think people tend to associate your environment, whether it's your work environment, your home environment, how that impacts your peace. Something as simple as, if my house is in disarray, I don't have peace because I have a standard of how I want my house to be. You know,
yeah.
so
So I'll jump and speak to that. Like when I go into my man cave, it don't matter what type of day I'm having. I automatically just feel like, okay, man, I'm feeling good. I don't work in there. Like I try to keep that separate because I want that to just be a straight area of solitude, and I don't want to mix that with any type of business activities. But that environment makes a big difference, and that can be again your home, your car, where you live, where you work. Again, your own mind, like how you live in your mind, all of that matters.
yes, that's why I have to shout out Patrice Washington. Y'all need to check out, if y'all don't know about Patrice Washington, she got her 6 pillars of wellness. She
Mm,
she has a master's in financial psychology. So she talks about how a lot of times we say we want to have, I need to work on my budget, I need to have more savings, I need to have, like, you want to do all these things financially, but realizing how sometimes there are certain Our environment impacts it, people impact it. Sometimes when we have in certain voids, how certain voids impact our finances. So her whole thing is around personal and financial development and how they integrate, which is I love. Like I'm a part of her redefining institute, and she has her 6 pillars of wellness. So I will always encourage people to check that out, because a lot of times we do want more money, but we're not realizing how our behaviors and our patterns are impacting that, how trauma is impacting our finances, how our environment are impacting our finances, our spirituality, all of that. So I'm so glad that you are using those, using that as a example to tell people like it's possible to have it, but also realizing like you can have all the prosperity in the world, like whether that, let's say for instance, for people maybe it's money, but feel like crap on the inside. And I think Jason, you posted something, I can't remember the exact quote, but you said something like, make sure you're taking care of yourself, something along the line, so that you can enjoy like your success. Do you remember that post?
Yeah, well, I noticed one I reposted, probably like if you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one, that one. I want to double back though, because you said something about trauma and how that impacts you and how we show up. If we don't work on our trauma, then we can overdo things in other areas. So it'll come out in the relationships we have. We'll seek out poor relationships. We'll accept unacceptable behaviors or unhealthy behaviors. Also, our work ethic. We may put so much into work because it's easier to avoid and put all our energy there as opposed to dealing with the feelings. And how we spend our money. We'll overcompensate for things that we're doing or what we feel inside by trying to buy all these material things. So we'll try to have a false sense of confidence, air quotes confidence, by again overspending. We may engage again in like promiscuity. We may have other maladaptive coping behaviors, whether that be drinking, partying, whatever it is. But as opposed to really truly working on you as a person and what you're feeling internally.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I am definitely someone who has experienced trauma. I have a diagnosis of PTSD, and I would always choose like direct care work within the social services field because I always felt so obligated to like, I need to help people because there were points in my life where I needed help, and this was my way of giving back. And so I would always burn myself out doing like, I did juvenile detention, I did adult probation, things in social services. I was always trying to compensate for, I guess, the help I felt I desperately needed by helping others. And it probably wasn't the healthiest decision for me to make, but that I just fell into a pattern of constantly choosing that type of work.
That's some tough work too. That's some tough work.
Yes. Speaking of man cave, by the way, at the time that we're recording this with Jason, it is the month of June, and June is actually Men's Mental Health Month. And I don't think a lot of people know that, but just a little tidbit. So, Jason, if you could speak to any advice that you would give to any Black men or Black youth, because we probably have some youth listeners out there. Our podcast is for everybody. What advice would you give them if they are struggling with their mental health?
Talk to somebody, like be vulnerable. So as men, we like to keep everything to ourselves. We may talk about a little thing with our homies sometimes, but most times we're holding so much inside. So be vulnerable, whether that's with somebody you trust, it could be a brother, a mentor, a barber, but be more open. Second thing I would say is get a mentor, have a coach, have a therapist, but have somebody that you can really pour into and talk about some things, because I know brothers are carrying so much. The last thing I would say is keep going, because for men, sometimes we doubt ourselves, but we don't tell anybody that. We just, again, we keep it inside. But give yourself the strength to keep going, but also be more open about what you got going on.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jason. So before you go, we had to give you just the last opportunity to talk about what's next for you, how people can find you. And if you're not following Jason, I'm going to just tell you, y'all missing out.
Oh man, one, I appreciate y'all having me. People can follow me on social media, all platforms is at J Phillips MSW. Visit my website, jasonlphillips.com. That's for any speaking or consulting. And what was the last question? What I have going on?
Yeah, is there anything you want to share that you got coming up, promoting, anything you want to, you can plug your plugs.
Yeah, so my podcast, I mean, I gotta have y'all on my podcast too. So Peace and Prosperity Podcast, we are releasing more episodes. That's on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. And really, what I have going on is a lot of self care. You know, the last couple of years I've been busy, so I'm just kind of taking it easy.
Jordan, you were going to say something? Well, thank you, Jason, so much for being a part of the podcast. This has been an interview that I have really been looking forward to. Just want to tell you, from a Black sister to a Black brother, I am so proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing, because you're really out here changing people's lives. I can speak for myself, but y'all, I love everything that Jason does. So keep going.
I really
Yeah,
appreciate y'all.
I'm really, really glad that we got to meet you in New York. T-Kea has been talking about you ever since.
It was great. It was great. I gotta send you some of those pictures too, because I don't think you have all of them.
Oh, yes, please do.
I
You're on that website. I don't know if you know, but you are.
I didn't know. I didn't. I love y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so if you are new to our podcast, we always like to highlight someone in our episodes that has passed away from suicide, and we call that our spotlight. And our goal is to keep that person in our memory and honor their legacy. So for today, we are highlighting Flordan Bazile. He was a student and a member of the track team at University of Massachusetts in Dartmouth. He had also been a member of the Haitian American Students Association, a member of the Kompassion Dance Team, as well as a member of the Cape Verdean Student Association and Dance Team. Flordan passed away from suicide on January 16th, 2024, at the age of 21. Also wanted to mention, because he is of Haitian descent, that we did a prior episode with Elise Antoine, and she was talking about her experiences as a person of Haitian descent dealing with mental health. So I'll be sure to tag that episode in the show notes if you are someone who's from that community and you would just want to hear a perspective from someone who's also Haitian. So to Flordan, we want to honor his memory today. And for today's resource, we are doing the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation.
Ain't you know?
Y'all, this is founded by Taraji P. Henson, so y'all probably heard of it, and her friend Tracie Jade Jenkins. They founded back in 2018. Taraji named the foundation in honor of her father, who was struggling with some untreated mental health conditions. And the foundation's vision is to improve mental health in Black communities by building culturally competent resources, programs, and education nationwide. And you can follow them at borislhensonfoundation.org and on Instagram at blhensonfoundation. And I'll be sure to include those links in the notes.
Yes, Taraji is a bison. That's why I had to say HU, okay? She's not a pirate, okay? She's a bison. So
yes.
now,
the real HU. We're not going.
So now we're going to move right along to me and Jordan's favorite segment, which is a segment where we highlight the off the wall, off the chart things that people have said as it relates to mental health, and that is the my God. And that is what is it, Jordan?
The foolishness. All right. So for people who have been in recovery for a while, whether that be mental health, substance use, you have probably heard someone say this, especially if you are Black. You ain't over it yet. Y'all, I remember Lord bless my mama, because I love my mom. My mama is great for lots of things. I've talked about this on a prior episode. She's great for lots of things. She cannot be your mental health support. I remember back in 2012, I was in counseling for like 2 months. And I remember one day I was talking to my mom about my counseling session, and she was like, "You ain't over it yet?" And I'm like, "It's only been 2 months. I'm confused." So you might hear people ask you, put you on the clock, on the timeline for when they expect for you to be better. And sometimes it just doesn't work like that. It does not work like that. Everybody's healing comes at a different speed, a different pace. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
foolishness.
So we just got to be mindful that healing is not linear, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and depending on how severe the trauma was, or how intense, because I think trauma is trauma, but how intense it
Mm-hmm.
was for that person, it may take some time to get, through it, while another person, they get through it a bit sooner. So we just want to be mindful that there is no duration, I guess, for healing. There are some things I think we heal from for the as long as we're here on this earth. Like, I don't think I'll ever be over my sister dying. Like, I don't think that's something I continue to learn to deal with, but I don't know if I'll ever be healed from that. But there are other things in my life that I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm healed from that." So just realizing that healing looks different on all of us, and also there are some things that we're able to just get over, and other things that it may take a long time, or we just can still deal with it, but we can deal with it in a better way.
Wonderfully said. And we're moving on to community change maker. T-Kea, you want to tell us about our community change maker?
Yes, that is Dr. Jeff Rocker, who is a celebrity therapist, a mental health expert, a philanthropist who founded Rocker Community Health. They are a nonprofit organization with the premise of breaking stigma of therapy within the community by providing relatable and accessible counseling to underserved communities. So Dr. Rockers offers an array of, did I say Dr. Rocker? Gotta make sure I got the name right. Offers an array of therapy services and is based in South Florida. So you can follow Dr. Rocker at XASK Jeff, and then also at Rocker Community, which will also be left in the show notes. So now we are going to move it right along to our events announcements, because y'all, I know it's amazing how people are always like, "I want to get involved. What can I do?" Or, "When y'all having something?" Well, this month is also Pride. So shout out to the LGBT plus community, because we are not my words, one of our participants' words, a reaffirming space. Okay.
Yes.
So if you are looking for a space where you are accepted for all of who you are, where you are not judged, that is the space. And then I'm not just saying this because me and Jordan are co-facilitating these groups. These are the words of people who have participated in the groups. So this month we are using, since it is Pride Month, to focus on self-love and acceptance. For our normal, we usually have Black and Suicidal peer support groups, but this is the Black and Suicidal peer support group LGBT plus edition. And also for allies, it's a great opportunity for allies and people of the of the LGBT plus community to come in, and let's have this conversation about self-love and acceptance, because it looks differently on all of us. We're all on different walks of life, so we want to encourage you to check it out on Eventbrite, but the link will also be in the show notes, but you can also see it on our Instagram as well. So happy Pride Month, and be sure to join us for our support group.
Yes. And so my favorite segment is here, self-care. It's not
That's
my
your
favorite.
favorite? I
It's
was
not my
like, that's
favorite.
your.
No, ma'am. I was being facetious. Self-care. What am I doing for self-care? Well, I think I might have mentioned this in another episode, maybe not, but I switched my therapist. Y'all, I had the conversation on this past Thursday. Like, I broke up with my old therapist. This was my first time actually doing that of my own volition. Every time that I've ever switched therapists in the past, it was something outside of my control. But I had a talk with her. I started with a new therapist and I really like her. And she's given me some homework in trying to prioritize my life right now. So I'm definitely going to practice the tool that she gave me to help me get organized and get things done. But I'm also planning to do a line dance class. I haven't registered yet, but T-Kea actually was so kind to send me. They're doing like some line dancing out in her county, so I might go check that out. And it would be a great way to get some exercise, but also have fun doing it. So I
Because
think that's
y'all,
what I'm going to
Jordan
do for
love a
self
good
care.
line dance, okay?
Listen, if y'all have not seen, go to our Instagram, okay? T-Kea and I were busting down on the Tamia can't get enough dance. Like, I do love me a line dance. I have two left feet. I've inherited those two left feet from my mom, but I still try to get out there and cut a rug if I can. And yeah, that's what I'm gonna do for self care. T-Kea, what are you doing for self care?
What am I doing for self care? Well, I did mention that last night I did get a 90-minute massage. It was great. Shout out to Beth. Beth is a friend of mine, but she's also a yoga instructor and a massage therapist. And I always tell her, girl, the way you touch my body needs Beth hands, okay? It was so good. Like I knew when I got in the area, like when I parked my car, as I was driving to get my massage, I felt my body already shutting down because it was at 6 o'clock. So I decided I'm going anytime I get my massages, they're going to be on a Friday evening at 6. So that way it's just and after I get my massage, I can just shower and go to bed. And this is the second month that I've got my massage on a Friday at 6. So that's my new wave that I'm on. I'm working to include that in my monthly expense. And I and even when she was giving me the massage, she was saying there were knots, not just in my neck. And if you're reporting, if you can't see me if you're listening, but there were knots not just in my neck, but it was like right where your like where your hair is, like at the bottom of your neck, there were like knots up there, and I felt her like actually. I was like, oh my gosh. She told me that she said your hips were tight, your calves, your neck, like everything, so yes, I did that, and I've been working to make sure that I get massages at least once a month. I would like to do more, but they cost. So that's what I've done. um I'm not gonna say the only reason why I'm not gonna say running or exercise is because that's something that I feel like I kind of have down pack, if you will. Now if I start not doing well in that area, then I'll add it back. But I feel like that's an area I'm doing pretty well in as it relates to self care. And I'm also going on a trip next month. I'm excited. Y'all gonna find out about this the first time that Jordan's finding out. But I'm going to St. Thomas next month, and I am very excited to unplug. No laptop, no work phone. Like I am so excited about pulling away, and so that is what I am doing for yes, what I guess doing for self-care. And I also what I need to do is need it would be helpful to make sure that I'm getting more sleep. While I am sleeping, I'm still just working entirely too much. So and working to build time in my calendar to just have days of doing nothing, like I mentioned when Jason, we talked to Jason. So that's also what I'm working on, days to do nothing.
Listen, we love a good white sandy beach and clear turquoise waters. So I'm really excited that you're going. Shout out to the Virgin Islands. I wonder if we have any. If you're a listener or a viewer in the Virgin Islands, can you comment and let us know? Because I would love to see. I would love to see that. Yeah. Shout out to our friends down there in the islands enjoying the nice weather and the beach, because I'm hating because we don't have beaches like that in Maryland. Our beaches are dirty on the East Coast. Anyway, so social media. Follow us on Instagram, Black People Die by Suicide 2. That's TOO. TikTok, Black People Die by Suicide 2. That's the number 2. The other day I said the letter 2. Anyway. Also, go to our website, blackpeoplediebysuicide2.org. Sign up for our newsletter so you can stay in touch with all the things that we're doing. We also post all that stuff on Instagram. And check out our Black and Suicidal support groups. As mentioned, we're doing the LGBTQIA plus edition this month, which we're really excited about. And of course, follow us on our podcast platforms. If you're listening, watching, give us a like, follow, comment. That helps us out.
Yes. Yeah. And now we're going to close out, Jordan, with our moment of inspiration. Yes. And we got a quote by our forever first lady.
Our forever first lady. Okay.
Auntie Michelle Obama. And she says, your success will be determined by your own confidence and fortitude.
Y'all like how we turned that in? Confidence for Jason, fortitude for Dr. Walker. Wink, wink, wink. Y'all like that? Y'all like that? Yes. Our forever first lady giving us a wonderful word. Definitely, we just want to encourage people to really build your confidence if that's something that you're working on. Flex your confidence if it's something that you already have. And we appreciate y'all for tuning in to another episode. We'll see y'all here again in 2 weeks. Peace.